All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next speaker. So good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. My name is Josh Strickland. I'm a senior articles editor for the South Carolina Law Review, and we're happy to have you all with us today to address a lot of important issues surrounding judicial independence. And I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker and a great leader in our state and our nation, Mr. Trey Gowdy. Trey Gowdy is from Spartanburg, South Carolina, and attended Baylor University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in history. He then graduated from our very own University of South Carolina School of Law and began his legal career clerking for John Gardner on the South Carolina Court of Appeals and Judge G. Ross Anderson on the U.S. District Court for the District of South Carolina. He then served at the U.S. Attorney's Office as a federal prosecutor, where he received many awards for his work, including the Postal Inspector's Award for his prosecution of one of America's most wanted fugitives. In 2000, he was elected as a solicitor in South Carolina's 7th Judicial Circuit, where he started the Violence Against Women Task Force and a drug court program. After being reelected twice as solicitor, he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2010, representing South Carolina's 4th District. During his four-term tenure in Congress, he served on the Judiciary Committee, chairing its subcommittee on crime, terrorism, homeland security, and investigations, the Education and Workforce Committee, the Intelligence Committee, and the Ethics Committee. He was also the chair of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform and the House Select Committee on Benghazi. After his service in Congress, he returned to the practice of law with Nelson Mullins and became the host of the television show Sunday Night in America with Trey Gowdy. He is an author of several New York Times best-selling books and recently published his first novel entitled The Color of Death. In addition to all these professional accomplishments, he's also a husband, a father, and a father of two. We're honored to have him with us today, so please join me in welcoming Mr. Trey Gowdy.
I hate being introduced because I've had a really hard time holding jobs throughout my life, and it's just a reminder of that. Dean Hubbard, twice in 1 week, I'm at the law school in a classroom twice in 1 week, which is one time more than I ever attended secure transactions when I was in law school. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you. I'm going to read a quote, and then you can ask yourself if you know who it's from, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. In the government, the legislative department shall never exercise the executive and judicial powers to the end it may be a government of laws and not of men. That quote, or paraphrases of that quote, have cascaded through history. That was John Adams. It was not with respect to our own Constitution. It was with his state constitution in Massachusetts. But Supreme Court justices and legal philosophers and lawyers have made reference to this reality or this aspiration or this belief that we are a nation of laws and not a nation of men and women. You know, Tim Scott and I were going to Virginia to speak to a law school and to an undergraduate school on the majesty of the law and the Constitution. Imagine that, a former prosecutor, clerk for a Court of Appeals judge, clerk for a U.S. District Court judge, had worked for Nelson Mullins. Gosh, this was going to be easy for me. Go to a school and talk about the majesty of the law. Now, I was sitting on that airplane. We hadn't taken off yet. We were on the tarmac, and I'm thinking to myself, I got to be kind of professorial. I'm kind of conjuring up some of the law school professors that I had at the time. I mean, I never lived in a nudist colony like most of my law professors had, but I'm trying to conjure up what it would be like to be a law professor. And it dawned on me the law has the potential to be the most unifying, equalizing force in our culture. That's what I'm thinking on the plane. Unifying and equalizing. What else makes the richest person in South Carolina drive the exact same speed limit as the poorest person in South Carolina? What makes the wealthiest person in South Carolina pay his or her taxes on exactly the same date as the person of the least means? The law. So I am on the verge of coming up with something that I can say to this law school and this school in Virginia about the majesty, the unity, the equalization of the law. And I'm just getting started. I got to be more provocative than that. I mean, the law really is the thing that is most calculated to keep our republic together. It can be a sword on one day where you can vindicate a right, you can protect yourself against someone's overreach. It can be a shield on the next day. What else allows a single citizen to challenge your government, state or federal, in court and prevail? What does that other than the law? So we are on an airline that apparently doesn't believe in air conditioning because we're nowhere near taking off yet. So I've got the outline, the skeleton of my remarks. I'm going to focus on unity, and I'm going to focus on equalization and how it makes us all kind of on a level playing field. And I'm going to talk about the power of the law to bind together this diverse group of 350 million people from diverse backgrounds. And I'm going to caution them. I'm going to caution them about the law, that it's fragile. It's versatile. It can be a sword or a shield, but it's also fragile. One group that is clamoring for the non-enforcement of the law one day will be clamoring for the enforcement of another law on another day. So I'm going to warn them, be careful, guard yourself against the relativism of saying this law is good for you, but this law, not so much for me. Boy, I had the makings of this. I was excited about it. And then I started thinking, we still hadn't taken off yet. I don't know why Tim picked that airline, but we still hadn't taken off yet. And I'm not exaggerating. It was burning hot. I don't know what Hades is going to be like. I mean, probably find out after my 8 years in Congress. I don't know how hot it's going to be down there. But it was burning hot on that airline. So I had plenty of time to think, okay, well, that'll get you about 10 minutes through it. What else are you going to talk about, Trey? Then I thought, I started getting a little bit ethereal. I started thinking to myself, Judge Quattlebaum, what is the law? I mean, kind of says who? Is it what 50.1% of the people say it is? Is it what 5 really smart lawyers that sit in black robes, for the most part, hadn't practiced law in D.C.? And is that what it is? Is it what a majority of our own state Supreme Court, many of whom have practiced law, say it is? What is the law? What's the purpose of the law? I mean, is it our effort to kind of rein in the human condition? Is it designed to unleash our aspirations? What's the purpose of the law? Do we make law? Do we discover law? Do we uncover law? And who decides at what speed this evolution takes place? So now I think I'm working with something. I mean, I've got the majesty, the significance, the importance of the law, and then hopefully I can answer the question of what the law even is. I mean, is it our effort to kind of codify best behavior? Is it our effort to rein in our condition? I can get into a little bit of psychology. Are we inherently good or are we inherently bad? Do we need to be constrained? Do we need to be unleashed? And you got to remember, I'm a former prosecutor, so I am very much into enforcing the law. And then I did the strangest thing. Right before they closed the door and said, we're finally ready to go, I decided this little experiment, that I would decide to look at law through the eyes of the man sitting next to me. I wonder what he would say. Senator Tim Scott, what would he say? Well, he might have a different take on the Constitution because it sure had a different take on him. 3/5 of a person. Then that got me thinking about the Declaration of Independence, that we're all created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Gosh, how aspirational that is. How majestic that truly is. And yet that never wound up being codified. We didn't strive, we settled. We compromised. But I kept that thought to myself. I still kept wondering. I wonder how my friend is going to talk about the majesty of the Constitution, the majesty of the law, when the law, when we were born, said we could not go to school together. Couldn't eat in the same restaurants. So no, there has to be more than just what 50.1% of the people say it is. The law has to be infused with something else. It has to have this element of virtue, of character, of humanity. It can't just simply be what a slight majority claims it to be. And of course, the pilot announces what we already knew because we've been waiting for 2 hours. We're on our way to Virginia, and I had that bumper sticker running through my head. Y'all remember the bumper sticker? Virginia is for lovers. Y'all remember that? Yeah, not if one of you is white and one of you is black. It's not. No, that's why. That was the law. No interracial marriage. And then we had something else we call the law, which is Loving versus Virginia. And I'm sitting there scratching my head saying, okay, well, you said this was the law, and now y'all said this is the law. Not only can they not both be right, they can't even coexist. They don't even coexist. So what is the law? And why am I showing fealty to something that shows so little regard for my friend? You know, our framers got a lot right. And if Tim were here, he would tell you, you know what, Trey, you're right. They made mistakes, but they gave us a way to correct those mistakes. They also saw the need, the imperative for an independent judiciary. It was the judiciary in Loving versus Virginia that gave us the law. And so y'all on another day for another symposium can talk about natural law, and y'all can talk about HLA Hart, you can talk about lawn filler, and you can talk about positivism. That's not today. Today, we're going to at least celebrate the fact that our framers had the foresight through the law to give us judicial independence, that neutral, detached arbiter, that referee that may not be what we want, but it is for certain what we need. So let me ask you, do you agree with judges who only reach the results that you like, or do you show the same respect and deference even to judicial opinions that you vehemently disagree with? I was walking with my friend now of 40 years. It's hard to believe that, Judge Quattlebaum. It's hard to say that. My friend of 40 years, Marvin Quattlebaum. We were walking together at a judicial conference, and it just so happened that day that some very high-profile Supreme Court decisions were handed down. So, of course, eager people are going to be rushing up to a Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals judge and say, what do you think about such and such? What do you think about this opinion? And Judge Quattlebaum, if you know him very well, had a classic, typical Marvin Quattlebaum response. He said, do you mind if I read the opinions first? What a crazy idea, Judge Quattlebaum, to actually read the opinion as opposed to going based off the headline of some journalist who didn't score high enough on the LSAT to get into law school. I didn't just say that, did I? Did I say that? Well, I mean it. The media does us no favors. They don't do you a service. When's the last time you actually listened to an oral argument? They're all online, by the way. All of our U.S. Supreme Court oral arguments are online. When's the last time you actually listened to one? Our Fourth Circuit may be online. I don't know. Do you read the headlines or do you read the opinions? We do ourselves no service when we live in this social media, soundbite-driven world where if we like the outcome, then the judges must be right, and if we don't like the outcome, the judges must be wrong. And let me tell you something else we got to stop doing. You got to stop referring to judges by whichever president put them in office. Because there's one thing that every federal judge in America has in common. Actually, there are two things. This may wind up on one of your exams. Two things that wind up, that every U.S. District Court judge, every appellate judge, every Supreme Court justice have in common. They were Senate confirmed, and they served for the period of their good behavior. Every one of them has that. So why did we give them for the period of their good behavior? So they could have the independence to do what they think is right, even if you don't happen to like it on that day. So we got to get out of this business of referring to Clinton judges or Reagan judges or Bush judges or Trump judges. Because actually, wittingly or unwittingly, you are undermining the independence of the judiciary when you do that. I have to literally stop and think. I just saw one of my favorite district court judges in the world. Now, I won't call her name, but her initials are Sherry Lydon. And I got to stop and think how she actually got on the bench. I really do have to stop and think I know who the senators were, but I don't know who the president was. I this morning was in front of Tim Kaine. Not on a personal matter. I was representing somebody. I want to make that very clear. The personal matter was last week. This was a different matter. I'm in front of him. You know who put Judge Kaine on the bench? Well, I'm not going to tell you because I'm not going to violate the very thing I told you not to do, but you'd be surprised. We got to stop doing that. It's unfair to the judges. It's unfair to the justices. We got to quit basing our reactions. Look, I listened to oral argument and I read the opinion. Here's what I can tell you about that high-profile case last week. I didn't hear a single one of the non-judges say whether or not they liked tariffs or not. Not a single one of them. I didn't hear. Their job is to construe a statute. Their job may be something as boring as what we call standing. It may relate to ripeness. You can't say because this decision was reached, therefore it was a failure or a loss for someone else. It is more complicated than that. Which brings me to my beloved state of South Carolina. I've known South Carolina Supreme Court Justice John Few since we were in law school. I had a bunch of trials in front of him, including his first death penalty trial. It wasn't my first, but it was his first. I had a bunch of other trials in front of him. He clerked for the same federal judge I clerked for the year before I did. I've known him for a long time. There's one common denominator in every court appearance I ever had in front of John Few. I never once got a close ruling. That's the common denominator. Not once did I get a jump ball. We're friends. We've been friends. Not once. That's exactly the kind of justice that I want. I want a justice that is tougher on his or her friends than they would be on their perceived foes. And we've gotten to the point in this state where we're going to punish a justice because he happened to interpret a poorly drafted statute. Why don't you go fix the statute? We're going to punish 5 justices because they unanimously said you can't do what the state constitution plainly says you cannot do? Talk about judicial independence. It might be a good idea if we stopped allowing people to appear in front of the very judges that they elect. That might be a good place to start. You know, there was a smoking ban in front of then Circuit Court Judge John Few. We all knew how he would rule on a smoking ban. He was granola before there was granola. I think for a while he lived on aisle 7 at Whole Foods. That's the hummus aisle, I think. Guy's never met a cigarette he liked, ever. He's a outdoorsy, he's crunchy, he's granola. Y'all know what I mean by that. So everyone in the world knew how he was going to roll on the smoking ban. Never met a cigarette he liked. Except he didn't. It's not about what John Few wants. It's not about what he thought the law should be. It's about whether or not that particular city council did it the right way. And if we're not sophisticated enough as a citizenry enough to understand the difference between the outcome and the process, that's the real threat to the republic. We got to do better than that. Judges are different. I mean, their job is not to decide whether or not something's a good idea or not. Their job's not to decide whether or not charges should have been brought. I use the word humility. Judge Quattlebaum, if he were up here, he would say, because he is humble and he's too modest to say that, he would say, I'm just following my oath. Is that really what you want them to do, though? Are you satisfied if they just simply follow their oath, or are you only satisfied when they reach the result that you want them to reach? And I will say this will be the sure sign I don't practice law anymore, because this probably make a judge mad. Judges got to help us there. It is rare, it is episodic. I can probably only point to a handful of examples in all the federal opinions that are rendered across this country, but there are some examples where judges write like they are members of Congress. And if you write like you're a member of Congress, you're going to be treated like you are a member of Congress. Your opinions should not read like press releases. Judges are different. It requires humility. It requires restraint. That's why we give you life tenure. So yeah, the law can be powerful. It's majestic. It's unifying. It's equalizing. It's worthy of celebration. But the law alone is never going to give us the society that I want to live in. I think John Adams, with all due respect to him, didn't shoot high enough. I don't want to be a nation of laws and not men and women. I want to be a good nation of good laws, passed and enforced and interpreted and executed by good women and men. So where does that virtue come from? Where does that character come from? How do you infuse that humanity into the law? How do you do it? Do you know what it looks like? I mean, the law can tell me not to strike you. The law can never tell me to comfort you if something devastating has happened in your life. The law can tell me that I can't discriminate against you. The law can never require me to treat you with kindness. The law, sure enough, can say you can all eat at the same restaurant. Something else is going to have to make us want to eat together at the same restaurant. The law is powerful, but it is not all powerful. So where does that humanity come in? How do you find the intersection of law and humanity, and will you recognize it when you see it? I got to see it firsthand, up close and personal. I was the district attorney, what we call circuit solicitor in South Carolina. And there was what the rest of the world refers to as a routine domestic violence call, which those of you in law enforcement or those of you who aspire to be in law enforcement, Chief Justice Toll full well knows this. There is no such thing as a routine domestic violence call. There's nothing routine about anything that law enforcement does. But there was a domestic violence call, and this road uniformed deputy named Kevin Carper responded. And by the time he got there with his partner, William Seach was on the front porch of his mobile home pointing a very large firearm at his girlfriend, Patricia Paris. And she was hiding behind a tree in the front yard in front of that mobile home. And just imagine that you're two sheriff's deputies and you come up on that scene. Is the gun real? Is it loaded? What happened before I got there? I've got these split seconds to make these decisions. Am I going to be prosecuted if I shoot and the gun is fake? Split seconds for these women and men to make these life and death decisions. Meanwhile, he's got the gun trained, is alternating between pointing it at his girlfriend and pointing it at the deputies. And finally, he points it at Patricia Paris, his girlfriend, and he pulls the trigger and shoots her. The officers return fire. One officer runs towards the victim and one runs towards the front porch of the mobile home to secure William Seach. Patricia Paris was shot to death. She died in the front yard. But when Kevin got on the front porch, he could hear the plaintiff pleadings of a child. I didn't see a child. One of his bullets had pierced the thin wall of that mobile home and struck a child on the other side. She was severely injured and there'd be a murder trial, and I even sat in my office and thought about charging him with the shooting of the child. Even though the bullet came from a law enforcement officer's gun, I decided maybe I'd get creative and charge him under some transferred intent theory. And then I remembered, don't get greedy. Just take what you got. You got a murder case. Take it. Don't get greedy. But I had to prep him, right? He's a very important witness. He's a crucial witness. He's the most important witness, arguably absent the forensic pathologist. So I brought Kevin into my office and said, we got to go over what's going to be a grueling cross-examination. Every decision you make is going to be scrutinized and micromanaged and second-guessed, and that's the job of the defense attorney. Don't get upset. That is his or her job. But I need you to be good. I need you to be solid. I need you to be honest. It was clear to me that his mind was not focused on what my mind was focused on. So finally I said to him, Deputy Carpenter, what is going on? Well, I need you, brother. I need you for this trial. What is going on? All he kept saying was, I shot that little girl. I shot that little girl, Mr. Gowdy. I shot that little girl. You know, that shooting was legally justified. It was morally justified. And yet he had the humanity to be aware that the consequences of his lawful, justified actions had unintended consequences for a then secure child. Boy, I love seeing that in law enforcement. I love seeing that in our justice system. This mixture of humanity with the law. Was it a lawful shooting? Yes. Is it okay to express remorse and regret that your lawful act adversely impacted someone else? Of course it is. So we got ready for trial. He was a fantastic witness. Kevin Carper, the deputy, was a fantastic witness. Kevin Carper, the husband, the father, well, he broke down again in front of the jury. This strong, powerful man in blue with handcuffs and a sidearm. Big man. But he showed the jury that humanity, that compassion, that even a lawful act can have unintended consequences. Even if it's justified, it's okay for me to show a little bit of remorse. You know, I had become hopelessly cynical at that point in my prosecutorial career. All you see is awful things. All you see. But he actually inspired me. His compassion, his humanity inspired me. It gave a little flicker in what was left of my heart. So I made a note that I would tell him that. But you know the hustle and bustle of sentencing hearings in state court. I mean, you got to get the victim's family, and the judge wants you to fill out the sentencing sheets, and you got to be prepared for what the defendant's family members might say. And I had every intention in the world of complimenting Kevin and telling him what a fantastic job he had done, but he kind of managed to slip out of the courtroom before I had a chance to do it. But I knew I'd see him again. He was too good. He'd wind up being a detective. We'd work together someday. I knew that. So I'll tell you next time. Next time I see you, I'll let you know. And the next time I saw Kevin, he was lying on the roadside, shot to death. Killed serving an arrest warrant for somebody with 30 prior convictions. I'm standing by the sheriff. Our arms are draped around one another, and the sheriff says to me, you know, our guys performed CPR. And I said, I'm sure they did. Sheriff, of course you did everything you could to save your deputy's life. He said, no, Trey, we performed CPR on the man that shot him. We tried to save the life of the man that shot my deputy. When you see the law intersect with humanity, then you will know that John Adams was partially correct. He just didn't set the goal high enough. We're a nation of laws and not women and men. But what if you want to be more than that? What if you want to be a good nation? Good laws. You want to incent good women and men to go into law enforcement, prosecution, the bench. Where does that goodness come from? The finality of a police officer's death hits you the hardest at the very end of the ceremony when they, I don't know if you've ever been to one, but they have dispatch call the fallen deputy's name. Deputy Carper, this is dispatch. Do you copy? And there's silence. Deputy Carper, this is dispatch. Do you copy? And then finally they say, Deputy Carper, this is dispatch. You are clear to go home. I want to be more than a nation of laws. I want to be a good nation. That requires having good people, independent judgment. Got to quit viewing the judiciary in the light that many people currently view it. The branch I used to serve in is AWOL. It's gone. Justice Gorsuch referred to that in his most recent opinion. That opinion really held up a mirror to Congress and asked, do you still exist? And because nature abhors a vacuum, something's going to fill that vacuum. My branch is AWOL. So something is going to try to fill that vacuum. And my challenge to you is to help do exactly what Judge Quattlebaum did. When somebody asks you, what do you think about X? Have you even read X? Have you listened to X? Have you put yourselves in the shoes of whatever justices or judges may have written opinions that you don't agree with? Our best hope for another 250 years is the system that you are studying to become part of. If you want to run for Congress, you are not part of the solution for the next 250 years. If you want a legal and justice system that is both respected and worthy of respect, then you will be part of ensuring that we make it for another quarter of a millennia. Thank you. Let's crank up that panel, Judge Quarterwell.